Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and we are live here on hashtag Jeopardy Live panel presented by thejeopardyfan.com. We are in the Tournament of Panelists 2, Episode 3. It is August 28th, 2017 at 9:05 p.m. Eastern, and we are live, and thank you very much for joining us. Once again, and as always, I am Andy Saunders, the moderator of hashtag Jeopardy Live panel, and let's get right into introducing tonight's panel. Our first panelist tonight, welcome back to hashtag Jeopardy Live panel, Bridget McNulty.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me back.
Panelist number 2 this evening, Cory Harris.
Hey, Andy. Good to be here again.
Number 3, we've got Harvey Silikovitz. Thanks for joining us. It's been a while, Harvey.
It has, but it's great to be back, Andy.
And last, certainly not least, Ken Hirsh. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, well, a couple things I want to point out. First up, we have a bit of a mild reunion from the first ever episode of Complete the List. Both Harvey and Cory were on that, of course, if you're not aware. Complete the List is my audio game show podcast that I host. And so welcome back to my stuff, both Cory and Harvey.
Yeah, it's a great show. I've been keeping up with it. And everybody out there should keep listening too. I don't want to spoil how that game went, though. Harvey probably remembers better than I do.
I will respect your request for that out of Megan.
And if you've been watching our tournament on so far, we've lost some of our peanut gallery, as of course Ken is actually on the panel tonight and not commenting on YouTube.
That's right. I'll have to come up with something clever to say in real time.
Mm-hmm. So if you have something clever to say, not so much in real time, we do have a YouTube chat that you're welcome to use. If I like what I see, I'll read it for the panel. And also there's the hashtag, as always, hashtag Jeopardy Live panel on Twitter. And of course, you can use that as well. So as always here on the Tournament of Panelists, I've got a page of 7 questions that we're going to go through and answer. Bridget, you'll be up first on question 1, then Cory, Harvey, and Ken. So, I've asked this. I think I asked this on the last Tournament of Panelists, but I think I like it. I like the question, and so I'm going to ask it of you guys. So here we go. I'll give you a chance to think about it as well. So here we go. Question 1 tonight. Describe your worst nightmare as a Jeopardy contestant in 60 seconds or fewer. So I know, Harvey, you haven't been on the show yet, but the other 3 of you have. So I guess you know what your worst nightmare might have been going in, or even, I guess, afterwards. And then, Harvey, what would be your worst nightmare going in as a contestant? So, Bridget, you go first, then okay. Cory second, Harvey third, and Ken fourth.
Okay, so this did actually happen because I taped almost exactly a year ago today, and the question he asked me was about my fantasy football team, and I said that we had just had our draft, and then I realized, like, I didn't even think about it at the time, and then I woke up in the middle of the night, like, oh no. Away, like when I taped and I know the show's not airing until December, they're going to cut my whole thing. They're going to cut me off the show. like, I don't know why, but that made me paranoid for about a day or 2. And then I just kind of forgot about it.
So in terms of the show itself, I guess the viewers just thought, oh, they have a really late draft.
Really late draft.
Late draft, yeah. Cory.
Makes it easier when you draft in December.
Yeah, very true, yes.
So I'm an English teacher, high school English teacher, and of course anybody on the show will probably recoil in terror at the thought of you being asked a question that everybody in your circle knows. So something I teach, something my students know that I get wrong would completely embarrass me. In the teachers tournament, there was a daily double earlier in the week about Harry Potter, and if I would have gotten it, I would have bet big, and I would have lost everything and the entire school would have mocked me. So I am completely happy that didn't happen to me.
So, like you mentioned, I haven't been a contestant yet. My worst nightmare is I finally get the call. I'm so excited to come out to Culver City. I get to the green room. I find out there's this contestant who's been winning for weeks. And I keep hoping that someone else who's called out for one of the games before me will knock them off, and it doesn't happen. So then my game starts like introducing 30-day returning champion. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't be cool to have the opportunity to be a giant killer, but in terms of just wanting to get my first win under my belt, that's not an optimal scenario.
I thought you might actually. That's actually what I thought you might answer, Harvey. So, very interesting. Very interesting.
It'd be a little predictable, but I'm sure a lot of people in my position would have similar concerns.
And you can.
Well, my worst nightmare also came true in a manner of form, in that my recurring daymare was that Shakespeare would come up with a category at a time when it really mattered, and in fact it did on my second day. It was the final Jeopardy question, and it was a triple stuffer, but I should have known it anyway, and I didn't. My wife and the audience knew it. Lots of my friends knew it, but I did not. And I bet as if we were all going to get it right, and so I lost to Julia.
Yep, that certainly can happen. So that's you know, an interesting. Yeah, I thought that's always an interesting thing to ask of Jeopardy contestants, though. I wonder what. You know what? I don't know if I think mine probably a little closer to, as somebody who hasn't been on, a little closer to Cory's than Harvey's. I'd be okay if I was up against somebody who'd won 30 times. I you know, they're beatable. It can happen. I think I'd be more worried about something in my wheelhouse coming up and me missing it. So I think that's certainly my own thoughts there. Let's move on to our second question. Cory, you'll get the first opportunity to answer this, and then go Harvey, Ken, and Bridget.
Okay.
So, a little bit, you know, more worst, a little bit of the opposite almost of the worst nightmare. So, is there a category that would cause you to at the very least, briefly entertain the idea of risking a lock game in Final Jeopardy? And what might that category be?
I will say that for the type of questions they would ask on Jeopardy, if a category on professional wrestling came up in Final Jeopardy, I would definitely risk everything for the all-time record. At least I'd entertain the thought. It'd be hard to fathom them asking a question in that I wouldn't get, that somebody else who just knows regular trivia wouldn't get, right? If the answer is going to be one of like a Hulk Hogan or something like that, that would be something that I would feel pretty comfortable with. So as annoying as that sounds and non-intellectual as it sounds, I'd feel thrilled to have a wrestling category.
So as you know, Andy, I'm a lawyer, and with a caveat that the Final Jeopardy category does not always accurately predict the direction that the clue is going to take. If the category was something like Supreme Court justices or legal terms, I would certainly be very tempted to throw caution to the wind and would have to fight that temptation very hard.
And of course, yes, with the caveat that I understand that, you know, I would personally not expect under any circumstance any player to risk a lock game. But, you know, at least there would be a category that, you know, one might at least entertain the idea.
Yeah, if I was up, 30,000 to 10,000, I'd definitely be risking the 9999.
So, Ken, what would that category be for you?
Television of the 60s. Being from my relative youth, a lot of it is still clearly impressed on my memory, unlike whatever happened yesterday.
And how about you, Bridget?
I would have to say probably state capitals, which isn't usually in the final Jeopardy, but it was about a week or two after mine aired, and the answer was Dover, and all these people got it wrong, and I was like, that was so easy.
I remember that episode.
Like,
yeah.
how could you? And people didn't even bet. I'm like, just bet everything. It's state capitals. There's only 50 of them. You're going to be on Jeopardy. Memorize them.
No, that's
and
very.
know the first state, by golly.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel as though I'd be interested in hearing Keith Williams's thoughts on whether or not to go big on state capitals, because I know that there's a lot of state capitals can be like, oh, these two state capitals are, have some weird thing with their names in common, and so sometimes it's tough to get to them in 30 seconds unless you know them, absolutely cold and can get to the or at least have the connection already in your brain.
Yeah, I agree, Andy. They've had state capitals as categories for everything so often that they just have to find twists that I feel like
Yeah, that's true.
irritating. It's not so much. I think they're more puzzlers than anything like that.
Yeah, I was having a similar thought to what you said, Andy, that it would be one thing if you knew that the clue would just be name the capital of the Sooner state, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have to go through so many in 30 seconds, even if you only have to name one of them, let alone two, that can be really challenging.
So, I mean, if you can go through the state capitals in a matter of 15 seconds, of course, to give yourself enough time to write the answer down.
Right. But what I like about it is it's a bound category. Like, for example, my final Jeopardy was scientists. I am a scientist, but I knew, oh no, this is terrible. Like, there's so many other scientists.
But they're only for the final Jeopardy category, they probably have about a universe of 20 scientists.
Maybe, but
starting
still,
with Curie and Pasteur, basically, and then going from there.
Still, something like state capitals feels more like confined.
That's again a good point, and I feel as though Keith would raise that same point with, again, it's a bound category and it's a popular bound category.
It would be much easier if it were like Canadian provincial capital.
Yes.
Smaller set. Yeah.
Which, ironically enough, might be a category in which I would entertain risking a lock game in Final Jeopardy.
I sure wouldn't.
Especially with Americans on the show.
Yes. So, before I move on to our photo caption of the evening, I have a question for you, Harvey, from our YouTube chat, and Fred Vaughn. How is Motown?
I really had a good time in Detroit, and I know it's a city that experienced some tough times, and I think it was even featured on that miniseries Life After People about a decade ago. So that's an indication of how bad things had gotten. But it's really improved tremendously from what I've seen. And it also has, in my opinion, one of the two best airports in the United States.
Which is the other city with the great airport then?
Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, D2W is really nice. I like going through there.
I've been through MSP once, and it's not bad. I've never been through DTW though.
Oh, and I'm wearing my Motown shirt right now.
Nice. So, as promised, and as always here on the Tournament of Panelists, we have a photograph that you guys will need to come up with a caption of. Hopefully, you'll be able to see that, for our panel. You'll hopefully be able to, if you can somehow click on me, you might be able to see it slightly larger. For our viewers, here is the photograph. You'll need to come up with a caption of. Harvey, you'll go first. Ken second. Bridget third. Cory fourth. This was a hard one to describe if you're listening to us on the iTunes simulcast. It's essentially 5 people celebrating. It's a stock photograph I pulled off the internet. So it's essentially a stock photograph of 5 people celebrating. So Harvey, it's your turn to come up with a caption for this photo.
And of course, this was the question that I most dreaded having to go first in. And I'm not saying that just to stall, but that's a true statement of fact. The guy in the middle is saying, "It's about time Trebek grew his mustache back."
Okay, Ken, go ahead.
More ages, more races. NBC's happy to present the new season of Friends.
Bridget.
We did it. We qualified as the first Jeopardy team.
And Cory.
The Fountain of Youth exists, and Trebek will be hosting for perpetuity.
Ooh, I like that last one.
Thank you.
The great thing is about hosting this is that I don't have to come up with the captions for any of these. Okay, so I hope some of our viewers, if you have a caption yourself you'd like to put up, of course you can use hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel. You can use the YouTube chat, and I'm sure that you guys will have the creativity to do something. I feel as though, Ken, you can speak to this. It's a lot easier when you have a couple of extra minutes to formulate an answer.
You can think things through a little bit better when you're not on the spot.
It's like a New Yorker caption. The people who actually do them aren't very good, but the people who have time to make good jokes make good jokes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my next question, Ken, I'll go with you'll start with this one, then Bridget, Cory, and Harvey. So there have obviously in the history of game shows, there have been many, many, many different game shows, and most of them have certainly not had the longevity that Jeopardy has had. Obviously, Jeopardy going into its 34th season, starting in a couple of weeks. So most Jeopardy fans are game show fans as well, a little bit. So what other game show do you wish that could have had Jeopardy's longevity?
Some have come close in various forms. There is a show that was on in the 60s. And if I'm not mistaken, Tom Kennedy hosted it. It wasn't a challenging show, but it was entertaining to watch. The puns weren't as ribald as the setups for the questions weren't as ribald as the Newlywed Game, for example. But it was a show called on NBC afternoons called You Don't Say, where basically the contestants would fill in a blank at the end of a phrase or a sentence of one form or another. And Tom Kennedy was actually Tom Nars, who was Jack Nars' brother. Jack was also a very well-known game show host for the 1960s.
Interesting. Bridget, what about you?
So the show wasn't on for a little while, and I guess now it's just coming back. But Cash Cab, I loved that show, and I don't know if it's back on yet, but I know it's coming back soon. And I always thought like that would be the best thing. You're just standing on the street in New York and the Cash Cab. So I would like to see that on longer and like spread out like to more cities so that there's more chances.
Cash Uber.
Cash Uber.
Cash Uber.
Good twist. Good twist.
Is it up to me now?
It's up to Cory. You're next.
Oh, my
I'll
bad.
give you more time to think, Harvey.
I
So
need that.
it's probably been gone for about a decade, and I think I only watched one season. I don't know how many seasons there were, but I enjoyed. My wife and I enjoyed watching a show on VH1 called The World Series of Pop Culture. So it was trivia, but it was all dealing with pop culture stuff. So it was really geared to the kind of the mid 2000s, sensibilities of 20-somethings watching. Watching that channel. So I think it was a really fun trivia show, and it really looked at the type of trivia I was asking and asking in a fun way. So it's been a decade since I've seen it. I only watched the one season of it, but I think that could have kept going. Pop culture, even in the last 10 years, is obviously a more ubiquitous part of all trivia and everybody's general knowledge.
Mm-hmm. No, that was Pat Kiernan who hosted that, right?
I do not remember.
Okay.
I haven't even wikied it for a long time, so I don't remember.
Sorry, Harvey?
It was Pat Kiernan. He also hosts on a local cable channel here in New York, so that helps me remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's from my experience, Pat Kiernan has always been a really strong game show MC.
Did he also do Grand Slam?
He was also the question reader on Grand Slam, yes.
So, although it got off to a rocky start, because what I prefer in game shows is a lot of hardcore trivia questions, I would have wanted 500 questions to last longer. I think it needed a little more tweaking with the format, but that it was improving. Dan Harris, in my opinion, was a much better host than the first season host, Richard Quest, and it only lasted 2 seasons.
Do you think that if you'd given 500 questions, if you transplanted Jeopardy's production staff into 500 questions, how well do you think the show would have been much better?
It's hard to say. I think the main issues were the format, which they were continually tinkering with, and maybe it wasn't well suited to be a primetime game show on a network, but it might have worked better in some way in syndication like Jeopardy.
Good point. Yeah, for sure. That sounds like I could definitely agree with that.
When you're a primetime show, the bar is much higher for the ratings that you need to attract. And an analogy might be, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire flamed out in primetime after just a few seasons, but it still goes on in syndication today.
And certainly I would say that Millionaire has, in syndication, has, at least since they've moved to Vegas, has seemed to have it's felt like it's had a bit of a revival a little bit, and it's certainly improved again. And
I think part of that is that Chris Harrison is a lot better than some of the people who preceded him as the host.
Excellent point. Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure.
He doesn't make it about himself like some of the others did.
Mm-hmm. So, moving on to question number 5. I know right now Jeopardy obviously has teens, college, teachers. They've had Kids Week in the past. They've had a seniors tournament in the past. They've had an international tournament in the past. I'm sure they've had That's just off the top of my head thinking right now. I didn't really research the entire list beforehand. But my next question for you guys, Bridget, you'll go first here. Come up with an idea for a new Jeopardy tournament.
I've actually had this idea for a while. Kind of like on Wheel of Fortune when they do like couples or best friends, do like a pairs tournament. I haven't quite worked out exactly how it'll work, like if you have to alternate answering or if you each have a buzzer, but I like the idea of being able to like pair up with somebody and compete that way.
Okay. What about you, Cory?
I would love, I know they do power players, but I would love to have a more of a more risk taker political one that's done during a campaign season where you have people who are actually running for office with a quick taping turnaround time. So people who would be willing to go and put themselves out there and get some either notoriety or some acclaim, just to, you see debates and things like that, but you never really know the breadth of knowledge that people have. So a kind of a political version of it.
And if that happened, saying what is Aleppo would actually be a good thing.
Exactly. And Al Franken would probably still win.
Did you know that Justin Trudeau mentioned at one point? Justin Trudeau mentioned to Alex Trebek that Justin wanted to go on Jeopardy.
That would be amazing.
That would be awesome.
So Harvey, your turn.
Well, this might be a little selfish, but I think they should have a lawyers tournament.
And I concur. But I'm afraid only lawyers would tune in.
I'm reasonably sure that most of America, lawyers tournament, people would be tuning into Hate Watch.
Yes.
Give those poor struggling lawyers a chance to earn some money. It would be great.
Again, I have to say, Harvey, you're predictable because I put this when I saw that this was in the deck. I'm like, Harvey's going to say lawyers tournament.
Well, I'm glad to meet your expectations.
And Ken, I hope he didn't steal your answer.
But that was my first choice, but I had a backup ready. I'd like to see rock musicians to see which of them are addled and which have retained their brains. Or their hearing, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of clarifications with Dylan.
Very true, very true. Now, speaking of that actually segues into my next question, rock musicians Jeopardy, because obviously on Rock and Roll Jeopardy, they actually had some quote unquote celebrity episodes where rock musicians actually competed. So there's been Rock and Roll Jeopardy. There has been Sports Jeopardy. What other Jeopardy would you like to see them come up with a specialty edition of? And we'll start this one with, this is question 6. So Cory, you get to start us off. Then Harvey, Ken, and Bridget.
I think, I guess I can't get away from my wheelhouse, but, just kind of like this would not get good ratings at all, but a literature Jeopardy.
When you said wheelhouse, I thought you were going to say wrestling Jeopardy.
Oh, I think they kind of tap out, no pun intended, after a few episodes. I couldn't think of any top of my head because I think those, sports and music are just two that fit naturally. We'll do literature Jeopardy, and it'll have 5,000 viewers, but it'll be fun.
My thinking is partly based on one of my wheelhouses, but also because I think it might actually work. Geography Jeopardy. There are a lot of different types of categories that you could place under the rubric of geography, things related to history and world leaders, for example.
Okay.
And it would sort of echo, in some ways, like the geography bees that they have.
Yeah, that would certainly be interesting, and I would say probably very good. I think I'd enjoy watching that. So Ken, what do you think?
Movie and TV Jeopardy. And there'd be plenty of fodder for daily video clues. Double Jeopardy or daily double videos.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that answer. You could get like Sports Jeopardy, take off a few clues, you have more time for clips. Ken's answer is better than mine for people listening at home.
And Bridget.
Kind of along the lines of what Harvey was saying, I think like a science Jeopardy, because it wouldn't have to just be like straight science questions. And even though people might not think they know a lot about science or want to know a lot about science, if you show how it all ties together, I think it would help promote science and be interesting.
Maybe Bill Nye's available to host it.
He would be a good host.
You know, I think it's interesting how you kind of all, went right into your various subjects of expertise.
Yes, of course.
And Andy, there's another.
It'll have to be self-serving.
There's another person who was on your tournament of panelists a couple of weeks ago. That I know that a geography Jeopardy thing would be right up his alley, and of course, I'm referring to David Kendall.
Yes, very true. Though I think my thought it would be a Canadian version of Jeopardy would be interesting to see. One that takes Canadian contestants and asks about Canadiana and stuff like that. And though it's interesting, one thing I find interesting, back in 2008, around the time when I auditioned, there were rumors going around that there actually was going to be a Canadian version of Jeopardy, but it never came to fruition. So because that was the year that CBC started airing the show, and it aired on CBC for a few years. And so there were rumors that CBC was going to commission its own version as well. Okay. So we are now at tonight's seventh question. Harvey, you'll get the opportunity to come up with your answer first here.
Such a coveted opportunity it is.
Yes. So yes. But it's the one you're. I did warn you all about this question beforehand. So the question, of course, being summarized tonight's panel in a tweet of 140 characters or fewer. So Harvey, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say Harvey first, then Ken, Bridget, and Cory.
So we talked about what my worst nightmare was, but H-Bomb's dream scenario, and H-Bomb is my nickname, by the way, so that shouldn't count as extra characters. H-Bomb's dream scenario, a lawyer's tournament with all geography-themed questions.
Very nice, very nice. I like that tweet. Ken, your turn.
Jeopardy contestants reveal worst nightmare. How about yours?
Ooh, very nice, very nice. Bridget.
Tournament of panelists, share your wheelhouse.
And Cory with the final tweet of the panel.
Well, I just went on Twitter and hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, put it up there. Mine is no eclipse for these solipsistics.
Ooh. Very nice.
Thinking about ourselves quite a bit here.
Nothing
Very
wrong
nice.
with that.
Sorry, Harvey?
No, you said we're just thinking about ourselves here, and I just said nothing wrong with that. The whole point of this panel, kind of.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for the to answer questions a little bit different than what you might see on a normal hashtag Jeopardy live panel. No, what did you have for lunch here? So. So, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me on hashtag Jeopardy live panel this evening. Once again, the voting will begin after all the preliminary panels are done, and the four of you, as well as everyone else who took part in a preliminary panel, will enter into the voting phase, and the top vote getters will be invited back for the final on September the 11th at 9:05 p.m. Eastern. So thank you guys for joining me tonight.
Thank you, and
Thanks,
vote
Andy.
early, vote often.
As long as it's for me.
So for everyone here at hashtag Jeopardy live panel and at the jeopardyfan.com, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great night.